first question for you is, you recently made a statement after becoming minister that part of the responsibility of CBC is to foster what you called, quote, social cohesion. Can you explain for the committee what you meant by social cohesion? The reason I ask is because experienced journalists have stated that these words, this term, is often used by the People's Republic of China to mean state control and zero tolerance for challenges. That seems counter to the values that we hold here in Canada, and so I'm curious as to what you meant by social cohesion.
I think in an age that we're all living through of intense disinformation, there is less social cohesion as falsities are propagated through media sources, both legitimate and illegitimate, integral to a healthy democracy. Indeed, the fourth pillar of our democracy is a healthy media ecosystem that exercises rightly its freedom of expression. Again, integral to that is a state-financed public media that is the CBC or Radio-Canada, not state-controlled. Indeed, the CBC's mandate is one that is ferociously independent, and we should all defend that, whether they're saying good or bad things about us. So when there is a lack of support for a public broadcaster, I think that contributes to the spread of disinformation, and social cohesion is therefore affected. It's not about any sort of command and control of the media system that you may see in other countries, but indeed in part of an integral to a healthy democracy.
So what is social cohesion?
Social cohesion is the ability for people to trust their institutions, to not feel like society is falling apart, that we are all living together and able to exercise the rights, in the case of Canada, that define us, freedom as enshrined in the Charter of Rights. I mean, I could go on beyond the time allotted for you to discuss this, Ms. Thomas, but I think we both agree as to what it is.
Well, I think that the committee needed to hear from your mouth what it was. And one of the things that you said in your statement was that it's a trust in institutions, and that Canadians should be able to place their trust in the media. And in particular, you mentioned the public broadcaster, the CBC. Interestingly enough, just a couple of weeks ago, there was a media summit that was hosted in Vancouver. And at that media summit, the president of the Canadian Media Producers Association said from the stage, just before the Prime Minister took it, he said, quote, "Prime Minister, know that every person in this room and the 180,000 people who work in this industry have your back, just as we know you have ours." Minister, this is from a media organization in a room full of media folks directly to the Prime Minister saying, we have your back just as we know you have ours. Minister, that's not the role of the media. The role of the media is not to have the back of the Prime Minister and to be able to tell the story that the government wants told. The role of the media is to be truthful in storytelling, to report the news as Canadians deserve to have it told. When a statement like this is made, it chips away at the credibility of media, and it actually distorts the trust of Canadians that you just spoke about being important. What do you make of that?
Well, what I make of your statement, Ms. Thomas, is you're deeply incorrect in the premise that, first of all, the event itself took place in Ottawa. It was not members, it was in CTV, CBC. It was producers of shows, and those two executives. Let's just correct the record.
Let's correct the record. It was news as well. In fact, the head of the CBC was one of the key speakers at this event.
What was said at the event, Ms. Thomas, from producers of shows like Heated Rivalry that was discussed at length, was that in the trade negotiations, these people that are defending Canadian content had the Prime Minister's back. It wasn't CBC or independent journalists.
Their job, with all due respect,
false.
Minister, their job is to report on those trade negotiations. And so if you're reporting on those trade negotiations, you just simply report the facts. You don't have the Prime Minister's back.
The job of these people is
That's
to make shows.
That's an illegitimate use of
puppets.
media.
Like these are producers. They make shows. It's not. They don't. It wasn't.
Minister,
wasn't
you're
journalism.
misleading the committee. It was not just producers. That was
The
part
two
of it.
speakers were
But
head of an organization that talk about media producers.
these are folks who are,
in a
who are
heated
receiving
negotiation
government
with the
dollars,
US.
who are producing material that is making it out to the Canadian public. They are telling stories. And they are telling the Prime Minister, we have your back just as you have ours.
They are telling the Prime Minister in the context of being under threat from U.S. content coming into Canada that they want to protect a pillar of our cultural identity, which is Canadian content. That's all they were saying.
They tell stories.
I think you're wrong, and I
Their
think
job
you know
is to
it.
tell stories. So how are they going to tell stories to protect the Prime Minister's back?
They want support financially to be able to tell stories about Canadian identity, whether it's good or bad about
But
the
they're
Prime
saying
Minister.
they also have the Prime Minister's back. So how are they going to have his back?
I think you're making this up. Like, I really think this
I
is something you're
think
looking for,
This
something
is
where
a
there is
direct
not
quote from the
an issue.
individual who spoke
But
from
you're
the stage.
insinuating that it's journalists that are going to spin stories positively for the Prime Minister because they quote unquote have his back. That's entirely false. These are producers of shows like The Littlest Hobo, for God's sake.